said that this informant now charged with some of the most corroborating evidence. He said that in an interview last month.
It did corroborate what I just said there, but it doesn't change the fact.
This is the path that they've chosen to take. And honestly, I'm surprised that they have this high of a threshold for humiliation.
Damn!
Every witness that they have called has decimated their arguments, from Devon Archer to Peter Schwerin to Marvin Yon.
Different show, same Jessica Tarlov.
It's so embarrassing.
I mean, what did you think? There would be a bombshell revelation that the informant Comer and crew have spent the best part of 18 months screaming about as the most credible witness since, I don't know, John Dean.
Well, as you know, Maria, Senator Grassley and I have reviewed a legally protected and highly credible whistleblower document.
Turned out to be a Russian asset, and the only voice of sanity on the network wouldn't speak on it, let alone spend the best part of 5 minutes outlining exactly how catastrophic this is for the GOP Oversight Committee.
It's so embarrassing. I think Jamie Raskin was spot on when he said that this impeachment inquiry really ended yesterday when we found out that we have a Russian asset that was foundational to this impeachment inquiry.
So that's essentially where we are. Again, I'm restating my call to Chairman Comer, to Speaker Johnson, to fold up the tent to this circus show. It's really over at this point.
All right, let's catch you up, shall we? In a new memo filed by prosecutors in Nevada arguing for the detention of Alexander Smirnov, the man charged with lying to investigators about Hunter Biden's connection to Burisma, it was noted that Smirnov allegedly had contacts with high-level Russian operatives. The memo was filed by prosecutors as part of an effort to keep Smirnov behind bars pending trial. Now here's the thing, if you think that this would result in some reflection from the GOP, perhaps, dare I say, an apology even, not just to the American people whose taxpayer dollars they've wasted over this impeachment sham, putting this informant on a pedestal, but the president himself for such gross oversight, endangering national security also. But this is the GOP we're talking about, which means when confronted on said lies and disinformation, they just double down.
Do you take back what you said about the president's involvement in a bribery scheme now that Alexander Smirnov is proven to have made it up and it was based off Russian intelligence?
Doesn't change the four fundamental facts. Hunter Biden was put on the board of Burisma, gets paid $1 million a year.
You said that 1023 is the most corroborating piece of information you have.
It corroborates, but it doesn't change those fundamental facts. So now
but it's not true.
Well, so it's the FBI told us that this source was 14 years. This source was a paid source by the FBI. When we were trying to get the 1023, they told us, oh, this could jeopardize national security, the safety of this source. Didn't want to release it, and now they're saying, oh, he gave false information. The other thing, there's a story out today. Scott Brady, the U.S. attorney, did check the travel records of this confidential human source and found that he was at those places he said he was. So,
but your promotion of a bribery scheme was false.
Not at all. We're looking at the 4 facts I just gave you. Those facts are true. Absolutely true. But Joe Biden bragged about it.
But what Smirnov said is not true. Would you concede that?
Well, yeah, that's what the FBI is saying.
Thankfully, however, while appearing on Fox News Wednesday afternoon, Liberal host Jessica Tarlov was on hand to remind those cocooned off from said bombshell report of just how embarrassing it is for the likes of Jim Jordan and James Comer. And even while her co-hosts did everything they could to deflect and even try to cut away from her early, the damage was already done.
Joe Biden has never had any involvement or any direct or indirect financial interest in those activities. None. Do you take that at face value, Jessica?
Yeah, you shouldn't go before a committee and tell lies, and I don't expect that James Biden is doing that. I don't know why Jim Comer and Jim Jordan thought that perhaps it was going to be Joe Biden's brother that brought him down. But this is the path that they've chosen to take. And honestly, I'm surprised that they have this high of a threshold for humiliation. Every witness that they have called has decimated their arguments, from Devon Archer to Peter Schwerin to Marvin Yon. And then we have the guy behind the Holy Grail document, the 1023, Alexander Smirnov, who's found that he had lied, right, about the charges, the $5 million that went to both of them. And then it gets even better. Not only did he lie, He was lying because the Russians were feeding him the disinformation. It's so embarrassing. I think Jamie Raskin was spot on when he said that this impeachment inquiry really ended yesterday when we found out that we have a Russian asset that was foundational to this impeachment inquiry. And Jim Comer and Jim Jordan should maybe try doing something for their constituents and let this go, because it's going nowhere.
Okay, let me push back on that a little bit, Jessica, with Sean here, because, you know, whether this is legal or not, we don't know yet, of course. That's what the Oversight Committee is trying to get to, Sean.
To further investigate off of the information that Tony Bobulinski gave him. This whole thing reeks, and I hope that we get all the information. If Joe Biden's clean, as an American, I want to know that. But I do think we have to do a deep dive into what's happening here inside the Biden administration.
Yeah, and Sean, this did not all center around Smirnoff's testimony. I just want to make that point as well.
No, but
Sean,
it was
Jessica,
foundational.
we gotta go. Yeah. Thank you.
And here's what we know about this matter. Not only was this informant lying to try and influence this election, this informant was potentially receiving information from Russian sources and then later passing that information onto American individuals. Not just individuals, by the way, but elected officials who have since regurgitated said lies over and over again.
The most corroborating evidence we have is that 1023 form from this highly credible, confidential human source, according to U.S. Attorney Scott Brady.
Just to remind folks who Smirnoff is, because they might not know the name.
Right.
This was the individual that had claimed that he had been told by somebody who ran Burisma that Joe Biden himself was going to get $5 million for all these shady dealings.
Right.
This is the guy that Senator Chuck Grassley was insisting that this FBI report be revealed to the public.
Correct.
This was the guy who basically provided hours worth of content on Fox, especially in prime time. This was the guy who James Comer, the guy who runs the House Oversight Committee, was relying on as a major source of information. And the FBI is saying the guy's a liar. In fact, so much so we're charging him with a crime.
Correct, Jake.
When you think about it, the informant has already succeeded in certain regards because most of these lies were spread across Fox News, where basically anything goes unless it comes at the cost of $787 million.
Jessica, just to push back a little bit on what you said, you said that everybody who's testified before the committee has said Joe Biden didn't have any involvement in this. Tony Bobulinski testified before the committee and said the only reason any of these international business transactions took place, with tens of millions of dollars flowing directly to the Biden family, was because Joe Biden was in high office. The Biden family business was Joe Biden, period. What do you say?
Well, I say that the Senate themselves, including Senate Republicans, have not found Tony Bobulinski to be credible. So he gives a great cable news interview. I understand it's very compelling for people who want to believe that Joe Biden is actually a Gotti, a mob boss. But he doesn't have a ton of credibility. The people who do have credibility, like Devin Archer, for instance, have completely blown a hole through that argument. He's talked about the phone calls. He's talked about the money. Peter Schwerin handled the books. And if you want to talk about loans, we'll see if there was documentation. I don't know a lot of family members who say, I'll lend you some money. We got to get a good interest rate on this. Make sure that I'm paid back in time. And he did pay him back almost immediately also. It's like we're going to hear about Hunter Biden's loan for a car that he paid back. What we're really coming down to is that we're going to be discussing the difference between blowing lines of cocaine or sawdust. This is a waste of the American people's time and our dollars to be doing this, and Republicans will be punished for it.
Oh, that's gonna hurt! But by the time that this recent news broke, countless Americans watching Fox have already bought into the idea that Biden is compromised. Therefore, Republicans, well, they're making the right choice to withhold aid to Ukraine. And that's just a mere hop, skip and jump away from going full fan of fascism, where you see former Fox host Tucker Carlson minimizing authoritarianism because, well, you can get shopping trolleys for a coin. We've been doing that in Scotland for years, mate.
And that's when you start to realize that ideology maybe doesn't matter as much as you thought, corruption. If you take people's standard of living and you tank it through filth and crime and inflation, and they literally can't buy the groceries they want, at that point, maybe it matters less what you say or whether you're a good person or a bad person. You're wrecking people's lives in their country, and that's what our leaders have done to us. And coming to a Russian grocery store, the heart of evil, and seeing what things cost and how people live, it will radicalize you against our leaders. That's how I feel anyway, radicalized. We're not making any of this up, by the way, at all.
When in reality, it is absolutely absurd that Republicans continue to peddle these lies while their impeachment of President Biden is falling apart at the seams.
That's how I feel anyway, radicalized.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Midas by signing up to the Midas Touch newsletter at MidasTouch.com/newsletter.